Xi Jinping presided over the first meeting of the 20th Central National Security Commission to emphasize accelerate the modernization of national security systems and capabilities. Guarantee the new development pattern with the new security pattern. Li Qiang Zhao Li Cai Qi attended. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, President of the State, Chairman of the Central Military Commission, and Chairman of the Central National Security Commission chaired the first meeting of the 20th Central National Security Commission on the afternoon of May 30th. Xi Jinping delivered an important speech at the meeting, emphasizing that it is necessary to fully implement the spirit of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, deeply understand the complex and severe situation facing national security, correctly grasp major national security issues, accelerate the modernization of the national security system and capabilities, and protect the country with a new security pattern, a new development pattern, and strive to create a new situation in national security work. Members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Vice Chairman of the Central National Security Commission Li Qiang, Zhao Li, and Cai Qi attended the meeting. The meeting pointed out that the National Security Committee of the Central Committee insists on carrying forward the spirit of struggle, adheres to and continuously develops the overall national security concept, promotes the continuous improvement of the national security leadership system, legal system, strategic system, and policy system, and realizes the effective operation of the national security work coordination mechanism. The security system basically covers the whole country, resolutely defending national sovereignty, security, and development interests, and national security has been comprehensively strengthened. The meeting emphasized that the current national security issues we are facing have become significantly more complex and difficult. The National Security Front must establish strategic self-confidence, strengthen confidence in victory, and fully see its own advantages and favorable conditions. We must adhere to bottom-line thinking and limit thinking, and be prepared to withstand the major test of high winds and even turbulent waves. It is necessary to accelerate the modernization of the national security system and capabilities, highlight the practical and clear orientation, pay more attention to coordination and efficiency, rule of law thinking, technology empowerment, and grassroots foundation, and promote the organic connection and linkage integration of all aspects of construction. The meeting pointed out that it is necessary to guarantee the new development pattern with the new security pattern, actively shape an external security environment that is beneficial to us, better maintain open security, and promote the deep integration of development and security. It is necessary to promote the reform of the means and methods of maintaining and shaping national security, innovate theoretical guidance, improve the distribution of forces, and promote scientific and technological empowerment. It is necessary to improve the response to the national security risk complex, real-time monitoring, timely early warning, and a good combination of punches. The meeting emphasized that national security work must implement the decision-making and deployment of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, effectively maintain political security, improve the level of network data and artificial intelligence security governance, accelerate the construction of a national security risk monitoring and early warning system, promote the construction of the national security rule of law, and strengthen the national security system, safety, education, and other aspects of the work. The meeting reviewed and approved documents such as opinions on accelerating the construction of a national security risk monitoring and early warning system and opinions on comprehensively strengthening national security education. Standing members and members of the National Security Commission of the Central Committee attended the meeting, and comrades in charge of relevant departments of the central government and state agencies attended the meeting as non-voting delegates. The big scam in the new version of Story of the Stone, the fake state-owned enterprise CYTS and China-Swiss International Appraisal Co., Limited played capital magic to increase the value of 4,002 stones from more than 2 billion to 38 billion yuan. China CYTS Industrial has inflated assets to cover up the fact of insolvency on the statement, and frantically raised funds from banks and other financial institutions. In fact, the asset-liability ratio has already exceeded 100%. 3 counterfeiting central enterprises has become a cancer, 63 financial institutions have been fooled, and more than 30 billion funds have defaulted. CYTS Industrial has no one to clean up the mess. This article has a total of 5,047 words, about 7 minutes. Author Lu Pei, Editor-in-Chief Zhao Yan. Source King Leo Studio. When CAO Swekin wrote Dream of Red Mansions more than 200 years ago, he wrote the most prosperous and romantic stone story in Jinling City with the help of Muhua's tenacious tone of refining stones to mend the sky. A new story of the stone took place in Suzhou City 217 kilometers away. After the capital was rich and the game was over, the parties fled to Hong Kong, leaving behind a pile of strange stones and a debt of 33.4 billion yuan. These strange stones were formed in the crustal movement hundreds of millions of years ago in Lingbei County, Anhui Province, so they are also called Lingbei stones. It is unimaginable that a total of 4,002 stones, superimposed with the culture of Suzhou Gardens, were given a sky-high price, with a valuation of 38 billion. Since the stone saw the light of day, it has embarked on a fantastic journey of value. Tens of millions, billions, 38 billion. The stone players are getting more and more crazy. The strange stone market with prices but no market is constantly going to the back of the abnormally high value. NetEase King Leo Studio found that the largest player is a counterfeit state-owned enterprise China CYTS Industry Development Co., Limited, hereinafter referred to as CYTS Industry. The latter used the ineffective evaluation report to raise the value behind the fraudulent loan from banks and other financial institutions. Today, the snowball collapse of CYTS Industry, which is known as 100 billion assets, has triggered more than 30 billion debt loopholes of more than 60 financial institutions that have not been filled. The fantasy journey of Lingbei Stone. More than 4,000 stones originally came from Suzhou businessman Chen Jinping. Chen Jinping originally produced glass fiber reinforced plastic businessman in Wujiang, Suzhou. Because he liked to collect strange stones, ancient buildings, and other cultural relics, in 1993 he surrounded more than 100 mu of land in Wujiang district, southeast of Suzhou City, and built a private garden. Sociologist Fei Xiaotong named it was called Jingxi Garden, and then a hotel was built beside the garden with the concept of cultural tourism. Strange stones are superimposed on the concept of Suzhou garden culture and tourism, and their value continues to rise. Among them, the most expensive and heaviest piece of Lingbei stone was transported from Lingbei County in 2001, named Qingyunfen. Qingyun Peak is known as the treasure of the garden of the Jingxi Garden. It is 9 meters high and weighs 136 tons. It is said that there are more than 1,600 holes on the stone, and the holes are connected. If you lit the flint at the bottom of the peak, smoke will be produced from all the orifices. If water is poured on the top, jade will flow out from thousands of springs. The stone is also endowed with historically legendary textual research stories. According to people in the Lingbei stone world, emperors of Song and Qing dynasties paid attention to the stone. Among them, Emperor Qianlong of Qing dynasty wanted to use it to celebrate his mother's birthday, but it could not be moved due to conditions. More than 200 years later, in order to transport the strange stone from Yugu Town, Lingbei County to Suzhou Jingxi Garden, 400 kilometers away, Chen Jinping went through all kinds of troubles. A person in Yugu Town who had been involved in transportation clearly remembered that when they discovered the Qingyunfen stone in 1998, Chen Jinping, the owner of the Jingxi Garden who was engaged in cultural relic collection, happened to be looking for stones all over the country and came to Lingbei. Immediately, Chen Jinping decided to buy the stone and organized local stone farmers to dig out the 3-story boulder. Due to the inconvenient roads along the mountain, Chen Jinping's excavation team not only built roads and bridges, but also imported a special missile launching vehicle from the former Soviet Union from Russia to transport boulders. It took 2 years and 7 months from excavation to final transportation to the destination. Stones are in high demand. When Chen Jinping was transported to Suzhou, the local municipal party committee wanted to invest tens of millions of dollars to buy it and put it in the municipal party committee building, but Chen Jinping did not agree. A person familiar with the matter recalled. Many members of the Lingbei Stone Association optimistically estimated that the discovery, mining, excavation, and transportation of the stone from Lingbei County must have cost millions of dollars. However, once the historical and cultural origins of the royal family and nobles are involved, the reputation and price of stones will rise in the collection circle. In December 2018, a self-media article on collections stated that the market value of Qingyunfen was hundreds of millions of yuan. However, there has never been a real transaction in the history of hundreds of millions of stones. A Lingbei stone player said that so far, the highest transaction price he has learned is close to 10 million. A number of Lingbei stone players responded that most Lingbei stones have a price but no market, and the bid is so high that someone has to buy it. Otherwise, no matter how high the price tag is, it will always be hype in your own hands. 2011 to 2014 was the best time for Lingbai stone market. During this period, Chen Jinjin publicized his Jingxi garden and the origin of this gemstone King Yunfen. Chen Jinjin used these stones and garden land to borrow a lot from the bank. According to a number of people close to him, Chen Jinjin was unable to repay the bank debts in the later stage, and in desperation, he sold the garden and its stones at a low price to a company, CYTS Industrial. Capital magic trick. After being sold to CYTS Industrial, the stone began the magic upgrade of capital. CYTS not only double-counted cultural relic assets as if by magic, but also hired a rating agency to issue a sky-high evaluation report. The client, CYTS Industry, has a famous name. In early public reports, China CYTS Industry was called a large state-owned enterprise invested by China CYTS Group under the Central Committee of the Communist Youth League in 1993 and approved by the State Administration for Industry and Commerce. The industry involved finance, real estate, TMT, trade, overseas investment, industry direct investment, etc. field. Since 2015, under the leadership of General Manager Zhao Zonghui, it has overcome difficulties and acquired assets in the local area without failure. It is also under Zhao Zonghui's command that in just 3.5 years, the total assets of CYTS have increased from 10 billion to more than 100 billion. The stones in the meditation garden are the biggest magic. After CYTS Industrial purchased Jingxi Garden and related assets from Chen Jinjin, China CYTS Industrial injected stones, tree species, calligraphy, and paintings, ancient buildings, etc. in the Jingxi Garden into Jingxi Garden Company in the form of off-book assets, double counting the acquisition asset value. At the same time, Zhongrui International Assets Appraisal, Beijing, Co., Limited, hereinafter referred to as Zhongrui International, was entrusted to raise the valuation for the asset value. According to an acquisition document obtained by NetEase Kinglio Studio, on June 29, 2016, CYTS Industrial and Chen Jinjin signed a framework cooperation agreement. CYTS Industrial spent 250 million yuan to acquire 6 companies owned by Chen Jinjin Suzhou Jingxiyuan Garden Engineering Co., Limited, Wujiang Jingxiyuan Investment and Development Co., Limited, etc. 6 companies were later incorporated into Suzhou Jingxiyuan Co., Ltd. According to the acquisition document, the debt of the target company will be borne by the new shareholder, CYTS Industry. It is understood that this debt is as high as 1.97 billion yuan. In other words, CYTS Industrial paid at least 2.2 billion yuan for the garden and stones under the market. Immediately, in November of that year, the Suzhou Jingxiyuan Asset Appraisal Report issued by Zhongrui International estimated the off-book assets such as stones at 38.89 billion yuan. Among them, 4,002 stones are valued at 37.97 billion yuan. Tehu stone, valued at 300 million yuan. Tree species, valued at 120 million yuan. Ancient buildings, valued at 200 million yuan. Furniture, valued at 120 million yuan. Calligraphy and painting, valued at 30 million yuan. The land is valued at 60 million yuan. The report was signed in November 2016, which means that in just a few months, the value of the stones in the Jingxi Garden has increased by more than 10 times. Among the 4,002 stones mentioned above, there are as many as dozens of stones valued at hundreds of millions, and many stones valued at hundreds of millions are exposed in unattended open places. On the west side of the gate of Jingxi Garden, there is a Lingbai stone with a valuation of 120 million yuan, and there is another stone with a valuation of 280 million yuan on the side of the parking lot. However, the magic trick played by CYTS Industry is full of flaws. This document, which bears the official seal of Sino-Swiss International and the seals of 2 registered asset appraisers, is a fraud in the eyes of many members of the Lingbai Stone Association. When they heard that these stones were packaged into 38 billion assets by CYTS Industry, many Lingbai stone professionals couldn't help but blurt it out, "Isn't this nonsense, liar?" They believe that the evaluation and identification of Lingbai stone must be evaluated and priced by a professional person who understands Lingbai stone to be effective. However, NetEase Kinglio Studio learned from the person in charge of another Lingbai stone appraisal center that there is currently no special regulation in the country that requires professional evaluation of Lingbai stone to have special qualifications. However, the threshold of the Lingbai stone industry is relatively high, and the appraisal of people with more professional background knowledge is needed to be more authoritative. A professional researcher who is often hired by the court to evaluate Linbai stone said that the evaluation of Linbai stone and other stones needs to consider a variety of factors, such as the origin, shape, weight, price at that time, and current price of the stone, etc. It also requires the joint identification of at least 3 professionals. The evaluation report should clearly list the process of evaluating the value and the signature of the appraiser. However, the evaluation report provided by Zhongrui International to the creditors of CYTS is obviously much weaker. The report neither reflects the name of any Linbai stone professional, nor does it lack professional valuation basis for Linbai stone. According to the above-mentioned professional researcher of Linbai stone, the evaluation fee of Linbai stone is generally about 0.3% of the value. That is to say, according to the usual practice, the evaluation fee for this Linbai stone would be around 100 million yuan. In fact, NetEase Kingliu Studio learned from a person close to it that the evaluation cost of the stone was only a few $100,000 at that time. Fake central enterprises defraud loans. Using invalid evaluation reports, the inflated assets of stones are only a part of the packaging of CYTS Industries into hundreds of billions of assets. The biggest lie of CYTS Industries lies in defrauding around under the halo of central enterprises. After the acquisition of Jingxi Garden, the total assets of CYTS more than doubled year on year. In 2015, the total assets of CYTS were only 42.9 billion yuan. By 2016, the total assets had risen to 90 billion yuan, and 80% of the increase came from the appraisal value of Zhongrui International. At the end of 2017, the short-term loans of CYTS, consolidated statements, increased from 4.2 billion yuan at the beginning of the year to 9.4 billion yuan. The long-term loans increased from 3 billion yuan at the beginning of the year to 4.7 billion yuan. The overall debt scale was 55.5 billion yuan, an increase of 18.6 billion yuan year on year. By enlarging assets, the book asset liability ratio of CYTS is only 60%, which is not enough to cause financial institutions to worry. Secretly, the crisis of CYTS industry is imminent. If the inflated stone assets are removed, the overall asset liability ratio of CYTS has exceeded 100%, and CYTS is already insolvent. The asset liability ratio is an important criterion for evaluating bank lending. Although each bank has different risk appetite and tolerance, 80% is generally the default absolute upper limit, a local rural commercial bank told NetEase Kingliu Studio. Many creditors did not know what to do, and believed that CYTS industry was backed by a central enterprise, so there was no need to worry about credit issues. In the second half of 2017 or even the first half of 2018, credit loans will continue to be issued to CYTS industry. It was not until May 2018 that Beijing Gold, a subsidiary of China CYTS Industrial Co., Limited, which had a tight cash flow, actually defaulted on a 500 million loan, that many problems of CYTS Industrial Co., Limited began to be exposed one after another. Creditors discovered that Zhao Zhonghui, the general manager of CYTS Industrial, had fled to Hong Kong at the end of 2017, and the original 20% shareholder, Shan Zionjiao, deputy secretary of the party committee of the Central Enterprise CYTS Group Company, had resigned from the position of chairman of CYTS Industrial in May 2018. Both China Everbright Group and CYTS Group, which are the new controlling shareholders of CYTS Group, have announced that they have no actual control relationship with CYTS Industry. CYTS Industry suddenly became a fake central enterprise. Since CYTS was founded by the League Central Enterprise in 1993, it actually applied for restructuring as early as 1999. However, CYTS has been external for a long time and has not broken away from the hat of a state-owned enterprise. The chairman, Shan Zionjiao, is the deputy secretary of the party committee of CYTS Group. The equity structure of the social capital introduced by CYTS itself changes frequently, and the shareholder structure penetrates layer after layer, making it even more chaotic like an ecstasy array, and it is difficult to argue the ownership. Up to now, the shareholder structure of CYTS Industrial is that Runyuan Huashan Technology Development, Beijing, Co., Limited holds 75% of the shares, Tianhuihong holds 5% of the shares, and CYTS Group holds 20% of the shares. At the meeting of Central Enterprises in December 2019, the State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission clearly proposed to clean up the fake Central Enterprises that have not contributed capital and control but are labeled as Central Enterprises, and clean up enterprises that have been in liquidation for many years and are not included in the scope of consolidated statements. CYTS has become a typical case of fake Central Enterprises. More than 30 billion creditors' rights have been pursued to no avail. After the thunderstorm of CYTS Industrial, creditor institutions suddenly discovered that CYTS Industrial has huge assets. On August 26, 2020, the creditors held the first creditors meeting of this year at the Beijing Xiao International Center, where the office of CYTS was vacant. NetEase King Leo Studio learned from the creditor meeting that CYTS and its subsidiaries are seriously insolvent, and owed more than 30 billion to creditors and cannot repay. At present, the management of CYTS is not only paralyzed in operation and management, the actual manager has lost contact, the shareholders have evaded responsibility, and the relevant reorganization plan has not made progress. Their bankruptcy application submitted to the court has not been accepted. The most disappointing for creditors is that the foreign aid that had placed high hopes on its CICC Capital, which promoted debt restructuring, withdrew midway. CICC Capital participated in promoting the debt restructuring of CYTS Industrial in the second half of 2018. During the period, it was rumored that a new restructuring party had been found. However, CICC Capital suddenly announced its withdrawal at the end of last year, and CYTS Industrial's debt problem fell into a stalemate again. Everything is back to square one. CYTS assets in various places have been investigated and dealt with by local courts, auctioned, and the plan to promote the group's debt restructuring may have become increasingly elusive. In the case that the debtor's assets are complicated and the court does not accept bankruptcy, the representative of CYTS Industrial recommended at the creditors' meeting that both the creditor and the debtor authorize Beijing Diheng Law Firm to act as the administrator to initiate a pre-reorganization plan, which will be carried out by the administrator investigated the assets of CYTS in various places across the country, and finally pushed forward bankruptcy reorganization to the court. A Beijing creditor questioned at the venue, will CYTS Industrial cooperate with the law firm to investigate assets? Even after the pre-reorganization plan is passed, can the local underlying assets be brought up? Hire a new manager to promote the success of the reorganization. How likely is it? Their concerns are not without reason. The assets of Suzhou Jingxi Yuan, a subsidiary of CYTS, have been seized by relevant creditors of Jingxi Yuan. Suzhou Jingxi Garden has been filed for bankruptcy and reorganization by creditors in December 2019. After more creditors sued CYTS, they found that it had no assets to seal. After hearing that there was a pile of stones in the Jingxi Garden, many creditors tried to grasp the last straw. Even if it was a drop in the bucket, at least they had assets to compensate. After the CYTS industrial thunderstorm, the chairman of a local bank went to Hong Kong to find Zhao Zonghui. Out of affection, Zhao Zonghui said, "Why don't you mortgage the stones in the 2 warehouses of Jingxi Garden?" They had no choice but to mortgage the stones of 2 additional warehouses under the debt that CYTS Industrial could not repay. However, a fund institution in Jiangsu was a little slow to respond. When they went to Suzhou Jingxi Garden to seize the stones, they found that all the stones had been mortgaged, and there was no property to seize. Even if the assets of the stone were seized, the 130 million yuan of assets seized by the creditor Zhejiang Buchan Financial Leasing Company, including the stone under the name of Suzhou Jingxi Garden, was auctioned publicly on the judicial network, but in the end no one paid any attention and the auction failed. The court finally ruled that 130 million yuan of stones, valuable trees, etc. should be compensated to Zhejiang Property Leasing Co., Ltd. At present, these stones are still placed in the Jingxi Garden, waiting for the Jingxi Garden to be reorganized. Source: NetEase King Leo Studio.